Content warning for discussions of death, suicide, and jokes involving suicide, graphic imagery, and some uses of bigoted or insensitive language. And spoiler alert for Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day to you. And as always, these videos are just my opinions and are subjective, so let's go. So when you hear about a movie called Happy Death Day, what do you think? Kinda cheesy title, the poster looks like this, the trailer looks like this. I mean, maybe you thought, this looks like a dumb horror movie I don't want to watch, because I sure thought that. The second movie came out with the even cornier title, Happy Death Day to You, and I was personally not impressed. But I'd heard good things from a few critics I follow, and so one day, out of curiosity, I turned on the first Happy Death Day and was...
She finally rolls in.
Delighted.
You're always this charming in the morning?
Just this one.
Now I've seen both films, and I want a freaking Happy Death Day cinematic universe, and let me tell you why. Alright, so let's start with the usual rundown. Both Happy Death Day films were directed by writer-director Christopher Landon. He's actually the son of actor Michael Landon, who you might recognize for playing Charles Ingalls from the Little House on the Prairie TV series and Little Joe Cartwright on Bonanza. Now, Christopher Landon has a pretty interesting filmography. He wrote screenplays for the 2007 films Blood and Chocolate and Disturbia, starring Shia LaBeouf. Disturbia was basically Rear Window for high schoolers, but the opening scene from it has stuck with me for years. So good on him. He then went on to write Paranormal Activities 2 through 4 and wrote and directed Paranormal Activity The Marked Ones, followed by a film called Scout's Guide to the Apocalypse in 2015. Then in 2017, he released the first Happy Death Day film. And the journey of that first film is pretty interesting. In 2007, the film was announced under the title Half to Death, and it was going to star Megan Fox and be produced by Michael Bay. At that time, Scott Lobdell, who was mainly known as a comic book writer, had written the screenplay. He is still credited with writing the first film, but Landon was brought in to do a pass on the script, which made some radical changes, and while Landon liked the new script much better, the studio didn't, and the film was dropped. Several years later, he pitched the script to Jason Blum of Blumhouse Productions, and the film was greenlit with Blumhouse and Universal in 2016. Both Happy Death Day films star Jessica Rothe as Tree Gelbman. She's a sorority girl with some issues. She tends to be thoughtless and selfish and pretty accepting of her own bad behavior.
Oh, and you also rammed your tongue down Nixon's throat right in front of Danielle.
Over the course of the two films, she grows while never fully abandoning that edge which makes her so fun to watch.
Undulate, people!
Next to her, there's Israel Broussard as Carter Davis.
Oh, hey, you're up.
Carter is a good boy. Like, seriously, he's very good. He's the one Tree wakes up to every morning because Tree got very drunk the night before all this and apparently invited herself to his dorm.
I slept on Ryan's bed. I was afraid you were gonna fall or choke on your own vomit like Janis Joplin.
Then there's Ruby Modine as Lori, Tree's roommate who might be more than she appears.
She finally rolls in.
There's Rachel Matthews as Danielle, the head of Tree's sorority and the worst.
Samosa. My head's the middle one.
What time are you going to the party?
Charles Aiken plays Gregory Butler, Tree's professor who was married and sleeping with his students.
Your wife.
That's kind of a buzzkill.
Yikes! Rounding out the main cast, there's Phil Vu as Ryan, Carter's roommate, who mostly shows up to deliver this line. But we'll get to Ryan more later. Now, the plot of the first film is as follows. Tree Gelbman wakes up on the morning of her birthday, September the 18th. She's pretty rude to everybody and dodges calls from her dad, and at the end of the day, she's stabbed by somebody wearing a mask of their school mascot, the Bayfield Babies. And sidebar, that's the worst mascot ever, and my college's original mascot was an orange. From there, Tree wakes up again on September the 18th. She's unnerved.
I'm totally having deja vu right now.
But she goes about her day.
Don't mess with the Kappa bitch.
Then she gets stabbed again and dies. Finally, after a few go-rounds, including one where she tries boarding herself up in her room, which didn't work out, she enlists Carter's help. He suggests that she uses her apparently infinite number of lives to solve her own murder, and that's when this movie gets fun. One of the most impressive things about this movie is its pace and tone. We're watching this girl die multiple times, so there's the danger that the repetition gets boring to watch.
Oh, fuck.
We also see her be kind of a horrible person.
What? Nobody's perfect.
And this movie has to walk the tightrope of making us care about what happens to this girl while also letting us have fun with its premise. That's not easy. And when shit starts to get real, we feel that too. If you're wondering why the time loops are happening or what causes them, the first movie only has this.
It's your birthday?
Huh?
Hello? It's symbolic. Whoever's killing you knows it's your birthday.
The sequel will cover that in a bit more depth, but right now, let's talk about setup and payoff. So both Happy Death Day films masterfully utilize the art of setup and payoff. Now let's just dig into that concept real quick. You might have heard the phrase Chekovs Gun, or the rule of threes. How about foreshadowing, or red herrings? All of them are different avenues towards the same concept. In basic terms, setup and payoff means that early in a story, a detail is introduced. Then later in the story, that detail will become important. And when this is done well, the payoff feels organic because it was set up earlier in the story. A good example would be from the recent and delightful Into the Spider-Verse. In the movie, Miles Morales needs to learn to use his new abilities, most notably the web slinging. He gives it a try here, and fails. This is the setup. The payoff comes after some tough truths are uncovered and Peter B. Parker tells him about taking a leap of faith, so we get this payoff. Now, why does this matter? Why do we need setup and payoff at all? Well, because otherwise you get to the third movie in a trilogy and suddenly your bad guy is this other dude who was never mentioned in either of the two previous films, who we all thought was dead, or like you get to the end of 8 seasons and suddenly the queen is a homicidal fascist. It's just basic narrative structure. Set something up, pay it off later. Some stories can be more avant-garde, but like the narrative arc, this is a tool most mainstream stories will utilize. But there's more than one way to go about this. Remember all those terms I threw around earlier? Well, Anton Chekhov was a playwright known for such works as Uncle Vanya and the Seagull. He believed in narrative utility and every element of a story having a purpose. He said this quote a lot of different ways, but the one you've probably heard is, "If you say in the first chapter that there is a rifle hanging on the wall, in the second or third chapter, it absolutely must go off." This is the storytelling concept known as Chekovs Gun. A very literal example comes from 2007's Shaun of the Dead. In one early scene, we are shown a rifle in this bar. Later, this gun will be used to fight off a zombie horde. Another similar concept would be that of foreshadowing. Early on in a story, one can hint at or imply something that will come to fruition later. A really fun example would be 2004's The Incredibles. Fashion designer Edna Mode tells Mr. Incredible, "No kicks!" And later the villain is defeated like this. The rule of threes is a concept which suggests a final payoff is more satisfying due to its repetition, and also that audiences tend to remember well in threes. So basically, set up a concept, remind us of it, and pay it off later. And for our example, let's look at this one scene from 2010's How to Train Your Dragon. Early on in that film, the young Viking Hiccup is trying to tame his new dragon friend Toothless. He feeds him fish, he's forced to eat some of that fish, it's great. But Hiccup then tries to pet the dragon, and Toothless does not take that well. That's the setup. We get a little reminder here, where Toothless will not let Hiccup touch him again. And finally, we get this sequence where the two of them are clearly starting to bond. They draw together and play this little game, and at the end of it, Hiccup faces Toothless and tries again. And after a moment, we get the payoff. It's great. The last concept is that of the red herring, or the misdirect, which is sort of the inverse of all those other setups and payoffs. You find it a lot in murder mysteries. A red herring is where a story sets up something to mislead and distract the audience, making the actual reveal a surprise. And for our example, let's look at the first episode of the cult hit series Firefly, where we are introduced to this character, Simon Tam. Our heroes are trying to fly under the radar while taking on passengers for a little extra cash, and we're treated to shots like this, emphasizing Simon as a suspicious character. He's a little standoffish and seems overly concerned about some of his cargo that was brought aboard the ship, so when they find out there's a mole aboard reporting their whereabouts to the Alliance, the captain suspects Simon. Turns out it's not him, and the real mole was this asshole. You see, the misdirect was with shots like this, and Simon's aloof behavior setting him up as an unlikable character, while the real miscreant was just sort of less interesting than everybody else and easy to forget about until the time was right to reveal him. The Happy Death Day franchise actually uses all of these storytelling concepts to great effect. Whether it's Gregory being the red herring in the first film with shots like this, to make him seem suddenly very menacing. Minutes later, we see him murdered and that rules him out as the killer. Or the rule of threes with Laurie's cupcake. Or how about Chekhov's milkshake?
What is breakfast, Becky?
Or this nice little piece of foreshadowing here where Laurie tries to tell Tree her actions will have consequences, in reference to her ongoing affair with Gregory, which will be the reason Laurie was murdering her this whole time.
I think something like this is bound to have some pretty serious consequences.
You're right. It is none of your business.
What's fun with Happy Death Day in particular is that, due to the repetitive nature of the story, sometimes it's not just setup and payoff, sometimes it's setup and payoff and payoff.
He's going to fall right now.
And payoff. Sometimes we don't even get the payoff until the sequel.
What the hell are you always looking for under that desk?
Oh, shit. My mouth hurt. I grind my teeth at night.
Sometimes it's a little thing like...
Love is love, right?
And other times it's big things like...
He's been here the whole time.
It's just fun and effective storytelling, whether it's being used to set up a joke.
Did you get that fine vagina or what?
Hi, I'm the so-called fine vagina. If that's the way that you refer to girls, you and your hand are going to have a very lasting relationship. Have a nice day.
Or being used to set up the emotional underpinning of the movie.
If my mom saw me now, I don't think she'd be very proud.
Which brings us to the end of the first Happy Death Day. So, in one of the later loops, Tree explains it all to Carter again.
Sprinklers. Car alarm.
Any questions?
And the pair of them end up at a diner where Tree tells Carter that her mother is dead, something that's been hinted at with the bracelet, which seems to have sentimental value, and with this scene where we see her watch that video of her and her mother in a way that can only be described as bittersweet. We learn the reason she's dodging the calls from her dad is because her and her mother share the same birthday, and it used to be a big family celebration, but since her mother's passing 3 years ago, it's more of a somber affair.
I couldn't bear the thought of sitting through another uncomfortable celebration while we both pretend that everything is awesome.
And she tells Carter this.
You relive the same day over and over again, you kind of start to see who you really are. I'm not a good person, Carter.
And he suggests that...
It's never too late to change.
She tells him she's running out of chances. Earlier, she passed out and ended up in the hospital where she was told she had massive internal scarring to the point that she should be dead. Now she admits.
I keep on getting weaker every time I come back.
And then this emotional moment is interrupted by a newscast on the television. A serial killer is being treated at the university hospital where Tree briefly escaped her killer and ruled out Gregory as a suspect just a loop or two ago. And the serial killer, John Toombs, seems to target young blonde women.
He's been here the whole time.
So Tree goes running for the hospital, convinced she's found the baby mask killer.
He's going to escape. Call the police.
We even get a reveal here. And then Carter, who apparently followed Tree to the hospital, tries to help her here, which goes really badly for him. Tree realizes she'll have to reset the day or else Carter will stay dead, which leads to this moment.
See you soon, asshole.
And so Tree comes back one more time. But this time she seems almost jubilant.
I can't believe you tried to save my life. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no biggie. I just, brought you home. I don't know if you've Remember my name.
Carter.
It seems that with this loop, she's out to do everything right.
I never should have started seeing you. It was wrong.
Don't expect me to let you co-spy my class now.
Already dropped it. Can we start over? I promise not to be such a loser.
What was that for?
Do you want to take me out for my birthday?
What's the punchline?
Look, I know it's really random, but I promise I'll explain everything tomorrow. Assuming there is one. Just say yes.
All right, yeah.
She even goes and talks to her dad after avoiding him all this time.
I guess I thought that if I avoided all of it, that somehow it would be easier. But it's not. But I'm here. And I love you. And I am so sorry that I hurt you.
It's really sweet. And then she goes to kill Toombs. By the way, I like to call this Action Tree. I love Action Tree. And in the end, she wins.
Hey! Safety's off. Thanks for the tip.
She shoots him and gets to go back home to this scene.
What are you gonna wish for?
Tomorrow.
Happy ending, right?
This gonna be happy.
What?
I killed him! I stopped it!
She goes back to her room where Laurie's waiting, and Tree says she's leaving and getting as far from campus as she can.
Tree, what's wrong?
Me. I was wrong.
Then Laurie presents her with the cupcake, and Tree realizes.
Thanks, but I already ate it last night. I died in my sleep. You killed me.
She never actually ate the cupcake until last night.
Go on, Laurie. Take a bite.
And then we learn why Laurie is trying to kill her.
I know I've been a bad roommate, but isn't this a bit much? What the hell?
Maybe because you wouldn't stop sleeping with him.
Gregory? You've been killing me over some stupid guy?
Oh, that's not the only reason. You're a dumb bitch, too!
We also learn that Laurie had been letting Toombs get loose in the hospital, so when she murdered Tree, the escaped serial killer would be blamed for her death.
Eat it, bitch!
They fight, and Tree eventually kicks Laurie out the window where she lands in front of this poor girl who did nothing wrong ever. And we get a scene with Carter and Tree in the diner talking about what happened.
Laurie's little plot was super lame. Poisoning a cupcake? Really? We're Kappas. We don't eat cupcakes.
She answers a call from her dad.
I'm fine. I promise.
And Carter clumsily invites her back to his dorm.
So, now that your bedroom is officially a crime scene and all, where are you planning on crashing tonight?
Is that an invitation?
It's really cute. And then we get one final scene.
Oh, hey. You're up.
For a moment, the movie tricks us yet again. But actually, this time it was Carter playing a prank on her.
Oh my god, you are such a jerk! You're such a punk! I hate you!
Ryan shows up at the door, begging to be allowed in the room.
Out. I'm not sleeping in my cardigan. It smells like Hot Pockets and feet.
And then they kiss, and we get a final shot of that sticker on the door. And that's the end of movie 1. The story was all wrapped up. There's no way we can open this back up for a sequel, right?
You dumbass! You sent me back!
Oh, you sweet summer child. So, in terms of genre and inspiration, Happy Death Day wears its influences on its sleeve, whether it's the works of John Hughes, the aesthetics and tropes of a slasher film, this,
The movie Groundhog Day?
or this.
You know, this kind of reminds me of Back to the Future, too. Totally. Right?
Much like other films which reference and remix recognizable cultural touchstones, these films like to use those trappings to subvert our expectations again and again. Most slasher films involve some serial killer, but in the end, Tree was being murdered by her roommate. And in the sequel, Happy Death Day 2U, we start assuming that somehow Tree is going through the time loops again, only for this to happen. Ryan, Carter's roommate, starts at the center of the sequel. We watch him go through his day where he gets kicked out of his dorm by Carter and goes to the lab to meet his friends Samar and Dre, played by Siraj Sharma and Sarah Yarkin respectively. We might not get to talk about them much in this video, but just trust me, they're great.
I'm so excited! We barely know her!
We see that they've been working on this very science-looking thing, which apparently mysteriously activated the night before at 12:01 a.m. Then the dean comes in, intent on confiscating the device and shutting down their project.
We've had 4 rolling blackouts, fried electrical circuits, and it's all because of your little science project.
It's my thesis project.
It's an abject failure.
We eventually learn the device is called Sissy, short for Sisyphus. In Greek mythology, Sisyphus was the king of Ephyra, and he cheated death twice and was eventually punished by Zeus to eternally roll a boulder up a hill. An apt metaphor for the time loops, perhaps? Well, as the day goes on, Ryan gets some creepy texts, goes walking around this ridiculously spooky, dimly lit lab, and suddenly gets stabbed by somebody wearing a baby mask. So at this point, we, the audience, understand, in this movie, we're going to watch Ryan grow by going through these loops, although it only takes Ryan that first loop before he clues in enough to say something to Carter and Tree.
No, seriously. I'm having that thing. What's it called? When you feel like you've already lived through something before.
Deja vu?
Yes.
Tree, of course, literally just escaped her own time loop, so she clues in immediately to what's happening. We even get a fun recap of the first film, just in case anybody walked into a movie called Happy Death Day to You without seeing the first one. And we get a full explanation of Ryan's thesis project.
So basically, we're trying to prove that time can be slowed down on a molecular level.
You created the time loop, dummy.
In an interview, Christopher Landon said, "I was editing the first movie, and I kept watching scenes with Ryan barging into the dorm room and throwing out that really sexist question, and I started laughing because I thought, what if he was the reason this happened? There was something very comedic about that to me. So Ryan was the cause all along. Those rolling blackouts were a little hint for what would come. Because this is when Happy Death Day to You gets weird, and honestly, delightful."
Oh, and by the way, you're gonna die. Again, and again, and again.
Also, this happens.
Tell your girlfriend stop trying to scare me.
Oh, she's not my girlfriend. Oh, wait, are you my girlfriend?
Kinda.
So the trio set out to find who is killing Ryan. Action Tree makes a fun resurgence. And it turns out the killer is... Ryan?
What the hell is going on here?
Look, I was trying to close the loop, but somehow I got knocked into a parallel time loop. We're all in serious danger. It's a butterfly effect. You have to kill him. Me? He's going to create bigger problems if you do not stop him. Kill him now! No, screw that. Kill him!
Basically, Ryan activates Sissy to try and get rid of this alternate universe Ryan.
You don't understand what you're doing! Shut up, fake Ryan!
But instead of accomplishing that, Sissy ends up sending Tree back to Monday the 18th.
No fucking way. You dumbass! You sent me back!
What?
It's Monday the 18th!
And I just have to take a moment to point out one of my favorite bits of acting from Jessica Roth in this franchise.
This sucks! It sucks the biggest mega balls in the history of shitty ball suckery! It sucks!
Incredible, glorious, iconic. Where is her Oscar? But anyway, Tree is back in Monday the 18th. Except something is different.
Where's the cupcake?
What cupcake?
The one you made for my birthday. The one you poisoned.
I don't know what stupid joke Danielle put you up to, but there's no cupcake.
Carter and Ryan theorize that Tree has been sent into a parallel reality.
Does this mean that there are two of me?
I highly doubt it.
Whatever version of Tree existed in this timeline has theoretically been knocked into another reality as well. And then we see Danielle coming towards their table, just like she did in the previous reality. And this happens. Sidebar, that is the funniest goddamn needle drop I've seen in years. There's another really great one in this sequence. But anyway, we learn that Danielle in this reality is into acting.
I'm auditioning for this year's production of The Miracle Worker. All I know is acting blind is probably harder than actually being blind.
And also, she still kind of sucks. Tree escapes that uncomfortable scene when she gets a birthday call from her dad. She goes to meet him at the restaurant, and the movie has one more curveball to throw us here. Tree's mom is still alive in this reality. And unfortunately, so is Toombs. Tree ends up going to the hospital to try and face him off and briefly gets saved by Lori, who is very much not the killer in this reality. And then as the pair of them try to escape the killer, Lori gets murdered. Tree gets pursued by the killer through the hospital, and then this happens. And Tree ends up accidentally falling off the hospital roof to her death.
Rookie move, Tree.
Also,
What dimension am I in?
Huh?
Danielle.
My girlfriend?
Same one.
that bit really makes me giggle. And so here's when the movie finally hits its stride.
This is how it's supposed to be. My mom's okay. Lori isn't trying to kill me. I mean, this is like the better version of my life, right? I need to stay here in this dimension.
She just wants all the science kids to close the loop, but as they explain to her, none of them can remember what they learned with the day restarting, and it would take days to figure out the math to undo what Ryan did. Which means in this movie,
You're just gonna have to be a living record.
Tree has to learn quantum physics. No, seriously, she does. And she points out there is still a killer on the loose, and they suggest that she kill herself rather than wait for the murderer to find her.
Do you have a better idea?
You were gonna say that.
Cue the science and suicide montage. And I'll just say here, the way this movie treats suicide might not be for everybody. Like, the girl could just take some pills or something, but this is a movie, so she finds increasingly absurd ways to reset the day. Landon said in an interview, "We call it the reset montage because she's not actually dying. It's not suicide because she can't die. It was really important for us to make sure that the way she was dying felt a bit cartoonish. I wanted them to be humorous. I didn't want them to feel like real situations because I never wanted anyone to feel like we were making fun of suicide because that's not the case." Some people might not like this montage, and that's okay, but I personally do find this to be fucking hilarious. And if you think this movie is done flip-flopping genres, you're wrong, because much like the last movie, Tree reaches a point where she's running out of resets.
Actually, I'm probably gonna pass out.
Did that fine vagina or what?
We'll help you.
I keep getting weaker every time I come back. I don't know how many chances I have left.
Same as the last film, the deaths are still damaging her to some degree, so when they finally figured out the equations and the dean comes in to confiscate Sissy,
Where are you taking her?
My office, where it will remain under lock and key.
some other stuff happens, which I will talk about in a minute. But first I have to talk about when this time loop alternate realities Back to the Future 2 slasher movie becomes a heist movie.
Unless we steal it back.
I love this movie. It's insane. The dean confiscates Sissy, and the gang cooks up a plan to steal it back involving Danielle's best blind girl routine.
Can I help you?
I appear to be very lost.
And for some reason, she decides to be French, too.
It's so dark!
Move toward the light! Oh, sorry, that was insensitive.
So the gang steal back Sissy, and then...
Shit. If I don't stop the killer, Lori's gonna die.
So, let's talk about growth, huh? So, like, at the start of these films, Tree is not a good person. She even says so here.
I'm not a good person, Carter.
A lot of it stems from her bitterness over the loss of her mother, but a lot of it, I think, just kind of happened. I think Tree fell into these behaviors and was so busy trying not to examine the parts of her life that hurt that she didn't examine any of it at all. She became this vapid, selfish person who gets people fired and spits on Uber drivers.
Hi. Nobody's perfect.
But everybody has the capacity to change, as Carter says.
It's never too late to change.
And after living the same day enough times, Tree finally has the perspective to see the mistakes she's made and to try and change them. I do love the loop in the first film where she tries to do it all right.
Now you go out there and get yourself a fine piece of man-ass.
I love this running bit with Tim, by the way. Not only do we get to touch on it in the sequel, we also get a really funny callback to it once Tree is stuck in the loops again and super mad about it.
You haven't returned any.
You are gay!
But anyways, over the course of the first film, we saw Tree become much less self-centered, and a lot of that is seen through her growing relationship with Carter. The sheer amount of kindness he shows her eventually breaks through all her barriers.
Hey, wait!
Why are you following me?
I want to hear your story.
Thanks, Carter.
Feel better.
And so when he gets murdered trying to save her towards the end of the first film, she literally kills herself to reset the day and keep him alive.
I can't believe you tried tried to save my life. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no biggie. I just, brought you home.
And in the second film, even with the complication of his relationship with Danielle, which
Danielle.
My girlfriend?
I don't get it, and neither does Tree, but Carter seems pretty committed to it, and is still really decent and sweet to Tree throughout the film.
You still came.
Yeah, of course. Why wouldn't I?
And not unlike everybody's favorite show, The Good Place, both of these movies also posit that we can become better through our relationships with other people.
The best kind of love does that. It changes you. It makes you a better person.
But there's the added wrinkle in the sequel of Tree's mother being alive in this dimension.
What if this isn't the life that you're supposed to have?
I'm just supposed to go back to some dimension where my mom's dead.
You're living someone else's life that doesn't belong to you.
There was a scene at the beginning of the film where Tree wondered if the events of the first film mattered, if her growth still had meaning, if the whole thing was just caused by Ryan's malfunctioning science project.
Turns out it was just some big scientific fluke.
That doesn't make it meaningless, does it?
It's not.
In that same later scene, Carter tells her that she still has a chance very few people get when they lose someone.
You can say goodbye.
Initially, Tree rejects all of that and grabs her parents and tries to run away. She ends up having this talk with her mom.
We all have to make hard choices, Tree. That's life. And sometimes the past is pulling us in one direction and the future is calling us somewhere new.
And then she sees on the news that in her absence, Carter went to the hospital to try and save Lori, and he died. So Tree steals her dad's car and drives it into the power plant, killing herself and resetting the day. One last time.
Oh, hey. You're up. I wasn't sure if you wanted to sleep in or not.
That is the last time I'm dying for you.
What?
And after all of that, Tree decides to go back to her own dimension.
You sure you want to go back?
Can't spend my life living in the past.
But she still has to make peace with people in this dimension. So as Ryan and the others set up Sissy for its final run, she goes and talks to Lori about her affair with Gregory.
He's not worth it. I know what it's like, living a double life, always feeling like shit about yourself. As someone once told me that every day is a chance to be someone better. Maybe this is your day.
She also tries to talk to Danielle, who she thought maybe she had misjudged.
I'm sorry that I've made this.
Nice. A three-way.
And nope, she was actually right on the mark about Danielle. And then she goes to see her mom to say goodbye.
Shit, how do I do this?
Do you wipe, sweetie? What's wrong?
You know, people say I love you all the time, but it's not until you can't say it to that person's face anymore that you really realize how much you mean it. You are so beautiful and so amazing. I really thought I could have it all, but I can't.
Honey, nobody can. But guess what? That's okay. You'll get what you need.
In case you're wondering, this is the scene that made me cry. A lot. And I haven't really mentioned Bear McCreary's score, but this track here is really nice. And then after she says goodbye to her mom, and the dean takes Sissy, and the gang steal it back, and everything is almost ready.
Shit. I don't stop the killer, Lori's gonna die.
Tree has to do the right thing one more time, even though earlier she said,
People die every day, Carter. I can't be responsible for everyone, okay?
She goes back to the hospital to save Lori.
Lori, move! Oh, we've got to move.
Meanwhile, the dean finally figures out what's going on, and with the help of a few security guards, attempts to break down the door to the lab to stop Sissy from activating.
Oh my god, if I get expelled, my parents are gonna disown me.
At the hospital, we get the reveal that in this universe, Gregory is the killer and Lori was his intended target all along. And that his wife was in on it the whole time.
You really think I was gonna let a little whore like that ruin my life?
Then this happens.
I want a divorce.
And Carter appears to try and help Tree as she goes running with Gregory in pursuit until the pair of them reach the MRI machine.
Look who brought a screwdriver to a gunfight.
Wait! I have something I need to tell you.
What?
You're screwed.
And Tree wins again! Hooray! No, seriously, this kicks ass. Fuck that guy. She comes back to find Carter helping Lori onto a gurney.
I'm so sorry.
For what?
You just saved my life. I wish things could have been different.
I'm sorry, but we need to move her.
And just so you know, Lori makes me really sad in this universe, particularly with this bit here. And then Tree and Carter have this final moment together as the machine is about to activate.
I think it's time.
And she tells him,
I hope you realize I'm only going back for one reason.
and we get a beautiful sequence that gives my trashy shipper heart life as they kiss in beautiful slow motion. And at the same time, we watch the science gang try to foil the dean and those security guards, buying those precious extra seconds to let the device activate. And it works. Sissy activates, and the equations Tree spent ages memorizing worked. And everybody wakes up on the floor of the lab, right where we left them when the device activated earlier in the film. Of course, Tree has to make sure.
Danielle?
Who?
Hi.
Oh my god. I think I just shit my pants.
And that's the end of the movie. I mean, there's one last mid-credits scene setting up a third film and a goddamn Happy Death Day cinematic universe that I want more than life itself. Basically, government officials show up to the school, pick up the science gang, and tell them that they acquired Sissy and they want to further explore its abilities.
So we just need to find a test subject.
Carter objects because...
You want to trap somebody in a time loop? That's messed up. Unless they deserve it.
And Tree says...
I think I have the perfect recruit.
Amazing, perfect, poetic cinema. I want a third movie where we watch Danielle, as trash as she is, go through this crucible and come out better. Like Tree had to. And then I want 8 more movies. Because this is the gift that these bonkers movies give us. Like I said before, nobody is perfect.
Did you get that Papa John or what?
Interesting.
No, I wasn't trying to do
Not
anything.
as innocent as you look.
You're a
Silence!
But everybody, and I mean everybody, has the opportunity to change and grow. And in the case of Tree, she had nearly infinite opportunities.
Every day is a chance to be someone better.
And she uses those chances. She's not a perfect person by the end of these 2 films, but she's grown to see beyond herself and she's accepted her mother's death. In some ways, I feel that the act of going back to her own reality in the sequel is a little bit of a selfless act. Yes, she gets to go back to her version of Carter, who she cares for deeply, but their relationship is still pretty new and mostly based around all the loops she spent with him. From his side of things...
Oh, she's not my girlfriend. Oh, wait, are you my girlfriend?
Kinda.
Also, if we're being realistic, I don't think his relationship with Danielle in the alternate reality was long for this world anyway, but she gives up being in a world with her mother because it's not her world.
You're living someone else's life that doesn't belong to you. Your pain, that loss, it's what makes you you.
This version of her mother has memories of another version of her daughter. They have their own memories and jokes that our Tree doesn't share.
One of those giant cinnamon rolls from that bakery in Morro Bay. From our birthday last year? You don't remember? You ate 2 of them.
That wasn't me.
This other version of Tree never lost her mom, and our Tree deprives her of that reality by staying in this alternate dimension. Going back to her own reality means giving her mother back to her other self, and it means moving on.
I really thought I could have it all, but I can't.
Honey, nobody can. But guess what? That's okay. You'll get what you need.
The time loops are the crucible that Tree passes through to become a better person. And in the end, she'll get not necessarily what she wanted, but what she needed.
And sometimes the past is pulling us in one direction and the future is calling us somewhere new.
She'll be a better person. Not perfect, because there's no such thing, but better. Every day, we all have the choice to be somebody better. We all have the choice right now to be this asshole, or we can try harder and be better. Wash your hands and practice social distancing. We're all just doing our best out there, so we can make the choice to try for ourselves and for each other. And in the case of Tree, she is no longer the person she was at the start of these films. She's grown through her struggles and her relationships with other people. The transformation was uncomfortable and sometimes painful, but she made the effort, and at the end of it, she was changed.
Anyway, I can't change what I've done, but I can start trying to be a better person today.
Landon said he named the character Tree, partly because it was a cute nickname for Teresa, but also because trees need to grow. When you think about it, trees are always growing, and so is Tree. I'm not kidding when I tell you I am currently more invested in the series than I am in the Marvel Cinematic Universe or Star Wars. Sure, I like some individual films from those series, but these movies are just so fun. Sometimes I just want to have fun, you know? The third film is currently stuck in the phase where it seems there is a screenplay, but the film hasn't been picked up by Blumhouse, and now it just needs to be rescued by Netflix or something. I mean, we could pick apart these movies, which maybe don't stand up to the closest scrutiny. Like, in the first movie, Laurie's actions don't always make sense while wearing the baby mask throughout the various loops. It only makes sense if you just decide she's a blood psychopath because she kills a lot of people, including Gregory, who is supposedly the object of her affections, which, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, since I assumed she wanted Tree dead so she could have him to herself? Or in the sequel, where Tree spends a lot of the movie killing herself to reset the day. We learn that in that alternate dimension, the killer was after Laurie, so she could have just learned the math without killing herself? It's not a huge problem, but it does kind of nag me during repeated viewings. And we got an alternate universe Ryan who tried to kill our Ryan to stop him from using the machine. Now, I do think this entire sequence is hilariously bonkers, but later on, Tree has this moment in the alternate universe.
Does this mean that there are two of me?
Which Ryan completely brushes aside, but for a minute, an alternate universe Ryan was trying to murder our Ryan, and the movie can and will ask you to roll with that, and then forget about it unless that potential third film planned to dig a little deeper into that concept. Much like another favorite film I've discussed on this channel, this is the sort of movie that is at its best if you just sit back and enjoy it. I won't ask you to turn your brain off, but if you let yourself get swept up in the heart of it and the silliness too, it's a good time. There are more interesting behind-the-scenes details, like the baby mask was actually made by Tony Gardner, who designed the ghost face mask for the Scream films. Originally, they had a few concepts, including a pig mask, but Landon and his partner were expecting their first baby, and he said he had baby on the brain and was maybe a little scared of being a parent, so baby mask. Also, Landon wore the mask around a bit to test it out and terrified their line producer, which sealed the deal for the mask. Also, the first film was not meant to have a sequel. Originally, Tree was going to die at the end of the film, with Gregory's wife killing her in the hospital. And I'm really glad they changed that ending, especially because the sequel is so fun. And with this final setup, I want a Happy Death Day cinematic universe! If the Fast and Furious movies can have one, why not Happy Death Day? I look forward to Happy Death Day 8, which is a musical for some reason. Also, I really love the way these movies fuck with the Universal logo. It's such a fun way to set a tone from the very first frame. So, at the end of the day, I recommend you watch these movies. Watch for Jessica Roth tearing up the scenery with this no-holds-barred performance.
Andale, people!
Watch for the incredibly charming chemistry between the two leads.
I don't know if you remember my name.
Carter.
Watch for the cast of fun characters around them.
It's churro day at the cafeteria.
Nom nom.
Enjoy not only the campier elements, but what lies deeper beneath the surface. And just remember, trees are always growing.
Fine vagina out!
So, shit got wild while this video was being made. Initially I picked this because I just wanted a mental break for me, and now I feel that everybody everywhere needs some joy in their lives because shit is hard right now. To that end, I'm putting off JoJo and the Book Thief again. I already announced this on Patreon, by the way, thank you to my patrons, but yeah, I will get to this video. I bought multiple Blu-rays for it specifically, but right now I think we could all use some fun, so to that end, I'm doing A Knight's Tale next, you guys. Strap in, it's gonna be wild. And that's all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and yeah, I'll see you on the next one.